Now, the way we travel and what it might look like post-COVID is hot on the lips of all intending holiday makers. But just when are we going to be able to book that foreign holiday, and what is travel going to look like? Well, to answer these questions, I'm joined in studio by Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine. And Eoghan, I mentioned yesterday that you were going to be on the show, and we were immediately flooded with texts and emails from people because I think people are so confused and they've so many questions around all of this. And indeed, if you do have any queries for Eoghan, you can still text us on 51551 or send an email to todayradio@rte.ie, and we're going to try to get through as many as we can. So thank you very much for coming into this. Exactly, yep. So I suppose the first thing is, when will people be able to travel again, or is it still up in the air, pardon the pun?
Yeah, it's absolutely being ramped up this week. Lufthansa started their service in June. The key dates here: June the 15th, European borders open. July the 1st, the largest number of aircraft are returning to the skies. 40% of the Ryanair fleet will be up in the sky by then. I noticed a lot of the airlines who were talking about later July have moved their resumption dates forward. For instance, Emirates announced yesterday they're resuming from June 17. It's likely that Etihad, who were to resume on July the 1st, are coming forward to June the 10th. So what we've seen, July the 2nd, Air Canada, July the 7th, United, July the 8th, American. So what we've seen is, in the last week, 10 days, airlines getting confident about putting aircraft in the sky. That doesn't mean there aren't complications still in place, including the 14-day quarantine, but also insurance terms.
Okay, and on that, where can you go?
All the borders in Europe will be open on June 15. And what we've seen is people like Portugal, who have a very low rate and stayed open through it all, going through phased openings for things like when do swimming pools, bars, restaurants open, and their restrictions. The restrictions are much the same. Social distancing, it varies from country to country. That debate's been played out. And also wearing of masks, not so much by customers, but by staff in restaurants. Spain has a phased opening region by region. For instance, the Canary Islands is completely clear. It's one of the clearest areas in Europe, even though Spain is one of the most worst affected. So,
for example, if you were to fly to the Canary Islands, would there be a quarantine place? Could you go to your hotel, or how normal would it be when you get there?
June the 15th, everything normal. There are some quarantines in period and some total exclusions in some countries, but the European Commission plan is June the 15th, everyone opens. Now, that's where a lot of the debate about our own quarantine is floating around. We don't review that till June the 18th.
What about the airport experience itself? How different is that going to be?
They're going to work on social distancing as much as it can be achieved. They're already marked out Dublin Airport. We're going to have systems, one-way systems, things like that. They're going to try and emphasise contactless. That's not entirely possible at the moment because the conditions of getting into, for instance, Germany, for instance, mean that you have to go to a desk to make sure your documentation and everything is in order. That should change over the next week or two. So the emphasis will be on contactless. The emphasis will be on wearing of masks. It's not required in the airport, but almost all the airlines that are reopening, notably Aer Lingus and Ryanair, who do 80% of our traffic, require wearing masks on board. They'll also be looking for the getting on board will be by small groups, deplaning will be by small groups, priority boarding will be dispensed with, trying to get rid of cabin baggage checked in so that we don't have that putting it up on the overhead locker while we're on board, and that great tradition of when the plane lands, everybody standing up and crushing together in the aisle. We're trying to get rid. The airlines are trying to get rid of that.
Them get off faster.
The safety announcements are all being revoiced. Everything is going through for the moment, and the key, as I say, there are services. There are skeleton services in and out of Dublin Airport, about 15 flights a day. But July the 1st is the date when large numbers of aircraft will be back in the sky.
Okay, I'm going to get to some of our listener questions. Before I do that, briefly on passports, Eoghan. If people have let their passport lapse and they're looking for renewal,
there's going to be a bit of a backlog. All the staff are transferred to other duties, going to return to processing them the middle of next week. But I do expect a bit of a backlog. If your passport is up for expiry, other things were prioritised.
Okay, so get onto that quickly if you're thinking about going
very
somewhere.
Quickly, and it was announced in the Dáil they're going to be back in action on the middle of next week.
Okay. Now, this is from Monica. I think she emailed in yesterday. She says, "Hi Sarah, I'd like to ask Eoghan a question. Myself and my husband had planned to travel to Lanzarote with Aer Lingus back on March 10th. We decided not to travel due to coronavirus. We contacted Aer Lingus, and because it was just before the lockdown, we paid €200 to change our travel dates to September 16th because they thought it would be all over by then. Yeah. Now we don't know if we will be comfortable travelling in September. Will Aer Lingus look for another change fee if we want to reschedule for Christmas or next spring, or do we have any other options? We don't want to lose everything.
Really unfortunate. Aer Lingus were not quick to waive the change fee. Really unfortunate. They had to pay. Nothing can be done about that from where I'm looking at the moment. Up to September the 30th, you can change with Aer Lingus free of charge. They only allow one change, but presumably because you paid the change fee first, you presumably will get a free pass for a second change. There is an important thing here. If the flight is going ahead, you decide not to fly, you're treated as a no-show. It's a big issue for even countries you can't get into. For instance, we are flying to Chicago, Boston, New York daily, and the Americans won't let you in. But while the flight is going ahead, you're still charged for your flight. And the airline said, not our problem. Go to your travel insurance. And as usual, the travel insurance will send you back to the airline. There are myriad issues, Sarah, out of this that will be played out in the months to come. As it stands, this is important. You decide, you're worried, you're not flying. It's your problem. If they've cancelled the flight, they have to either get you to where you want or give you your money back, or an option. So people deciding I'm nervous is not a good enough reason. Now, where it does kick in is with flight insurance. The Department of Foreign Affairs has a blanket ban on all but necessary travel, and that's where what Leo was saying about air bridges and what Heather was saying this morning on the Morning Ireland about air bridges will kick in. That if there is agreed countries that we're allowed to travel to, the flight insurance, your travel insurance will kick in for that.
Okay, because I think we do have another question here in and around that. Yeah.
If theoretically the DFA says don't travel, you can now claim it off your insurance. But most common or garden travel insurance policies will not cover that. What will cover it is the extra flight disruption, which costs about €15 a year, €15 extra a year. But as you might imagine, after a date in March, I think it's March 15, that excludes COVID. It excludes COVID for new policies, and existing policies are supposed to cover it. Again, I've seen a little bit of play out on this, but I would expect that if you have flight disruption on your policy and the DFA is telling you can't travel to that country, you will get your money back.
Okay. Another person here, can you please ask your travel expert the following? 1, my Ryanair flight to Brussels took place.
Yes.
I had checked in, but I couldn't travel to the airport because it's more than 5 kilometres. So can I get my money back?
A couple of things here. If you've checked in, you're not getting your money back. The second thing is if you're more than 5 kilometres from the airport, you will be let through with a boarding pass or a booking reference.
Oh, really?
That wasn't clear at any stage, Sarah, but that's what the intelligence, not from the Garda press officer, but from individual guards is back. The Gardaí have not been stopping people going to the airport. There is a third issue, and it applies with some of the airlines, KLM for instance, where the airline begins to ask you, is your travel necessary? And in some cases have turned people back from airports. So we have very, very little clarity on all the different policies, airline policies, national policies, everything. But my intelligence, rather than advice, is that if you're travelling to the airport with a valid boarding pass and a booking reference, you can travel more than 5 kilometres.
A lot of this is so ad hoc, isn't it, Eoghan? It's sort of being made up on the fly from what I can see.
In common with almost all the COVID-19. Yeah. And, in fairness to every single person involved, this tested It tested all the little fractures of our travel infrastructure and other areas of infrastructure, and some of them are coming apart a bit.
Yeah. Another person, I have Aer Lingus voucher from last year. Mm-hmm. How long will it be valid and will it be extended?
Extending existing vouchers is an issue for both Ryanair and Aer Lingus because they are running out and people cannot use them. There hasn't been an issue of a notice saying we are extending it, and there are people contesting it with Aer Lingus. One of the big problems is it's virtually impossible to get through to talk to anyone on this. What I do say, if someone is trying to contact an airline, chat, the online chat is much better than trying to ring, and tweeting directly to them is a good way of getting a response. But again, they're overwhelmed. As it stands, vouchers that run out are not covered by an extension. I would expect both the airlines, the major airlines, to take an enlightened policy on that, but it is a big issue.
Okay, and actually on that, trying to contact airlines and speak to someone, another person has come in saying, I need confirmation from Ryanair that my flight was unused, but I can't get this. We checked in for the flight, but we didn't use it. I'm not looking for a refund from them, just confirmation that we didn't take the flight and we received no refund.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult if you've checked in for the flight. Ryanair treat a check-in as a flown passenger.
Okay. No CCTV footage or something. You could go to the airport maybe on it, but yeah, difficult.
It is an issue because some people book, because the flights are cheap. I've done it myself. You book 2 or 3 flights in case your meeting overruns or your connecting flight into Gatwick doesn't arrive in time.
Okay, lots of questions on weddings. One person here texting in, our daughter has postponed her wedding in Portugal until 2021. Our flights are booked with TAP Air in August. Can we transfer the flights to next year?
Most airlines are allowing a free transfer of up to 12 months, or in some cases more. And Aer Lingus' voucher, for instance, is 5 years. The issue with 2021, and it's haunting people, is not all the schedules have been loaded. Ryanair have loaded most of their schedule for summer, Aer Lingus have not. TAP, I'm not sure about. TAP are resuming, by the way, on July the 4th. That's great news. But I suspect when the schedules are loaded, it will be not a big issue to transfer. What is haunting airlines is people looking for refunds, transfers and vouchers they like. The reason, very simple reason, Sarah, is that a computer can do a transfer or can issue a voucher, but a human has to look at a refund to make for audit reasons, money laundering, all that stuff. So there are too few humans to look at too many refund applications.
And where are we at generally with those refunds? How long can people expect to wait?
Michael O'Leary yesterday said 10 weeks. He hopes to have them all cleared. He's talking about paying out nearly €800 million in refunds, and he says he'll have it done in 10 weeks. It's the first indication of an actual date that he'll meet. I'd say what happened was there was, the way Ryanair works is there's a great kerfuffle and the CEO comes in and shouts a lot and everybody gives him an idea of when it can be done, and then I suspect that they will be through it in that period. Like, it's 3 months and it's quite an amazing achievement considering they've 35 million refunds to pay, and as I say, €800 million.
Okay, more wedding questions. Margaret texts to say, I have honeymoon flights booked to Alicante on the 1st of August with Ryanair. The wedding has been postponed. Can I get my money back or vouchers?
The issue here now is that you've a separate flight to your wedding, so the event being cancelled doesn't mean that, it means that the flights are unaffected by that. If you were booked as a package, as a total package, you get your money back. That's generally done to a tour operator or a travel agent, one of the wedding specialists, many of them, Concord Travel, people like that. What will happen is the flight will likely go ahead in August. I'd expect, the plan is for Ryanair anyway, 40% of the fleet in the sky in July, 60% in August, 80% in September. I'd expect the August flights to still go ahead. You won't be getting money back if the flights are going ahead. Okay, but you do have the change without change fees option up to the end of September with most of the airlines. But again, they aren't blanket waiver of change fees. There are some terms and conditions that have to be and go into Manage My Booking if it throws it up fairly quickly that you can change. Otherwise, pursue the airline. Don't ever give up, by the way. Pursue the airline, because these are very strange circumstances. And despite the reputation of our airlines as being heartless individuals, their teams that are working on it are really working hard to make sure their customers are not completely unhappy. It's not really going to work for everybody, but that they are on your side.
But the people who are persistent, it could work for. Sarah, could Owen tell me if I can claim for my VHI travel insurance for flights to Italy with Ryanair in July, as my travel is non-essential and travel restrictions apply? That's sort of back to this government non-essential travel
absolutely.
thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Again, not all travel insurance covers it. Flight disruption is a really important one. Most travel insurance, if you have a sick relative and you pull out of the flight, you get your money. But for a flight disruption, for instance, the ash cloud 10 years ago, most of the policies didn't cover it. That's why flight disruption became such a big issue in the meantime.
I don't actually think this question is COVID related. Could you believe it? Maybe it is, but I don't think it is. I was due to fly.
The plague is over, Sarah, at last.
It's getting there. I was due to fly direct to Vancouver with Air Canada in August. They've now changed it as a stopover via Toronto. I don't want to accept that offer. They are refusing a refund, offering They're refusing a refund, offering credit only. Is this allowed?
The American Airlines are offering credit only for 1 year, and Canadian Airlines, and then at the end of the year, you're entitled to your cash refund. I expect that to be contested under EU 261, which has been completely overtaken by events. The Vancouver flight will not be returning. A lot of those flights, Minneapolis, Miami, Hartford, Connecticut, some of them we won't see for a long time again. But Air Canada are within their rights on the stopover, but on the refund, I do expect that if you contest it, you will get the refund. You may have to wait a little while, maybe not the full 12 months.
Okay. Hi, Sarah. My boyfriend and I have spent €900 each on flights to America. Ouch. On July 20th. The ouch was from me, not in the text. This is with Aer Lingus.
Double ouch.
Yeah, exactly. Double ouch. We don't feel safe flying, says this texter. We looked at changing flights to next Easter, but they would be double the price next Easter. What can we do? All we need is a voucher.
Voucher is what? It's not enough reason that I'm nervous about flying, not to fly. What is a reason to get money back is to go to the insurance company and say the DFA won't allow me fly. But that is likely to be lifted. I mean, the talk now is of these air bridges where we select countries that are safe to go to and not safe to go to. And it's very likely that's where the DFA will start moving on that blanket advice at the moment of all but essential travel.
So right now, because it's getting really confusing as to who's allowing who to go where, is America allowing people in?
No.
By July 20th, that may or may not have changed. If it hasn't changed and America still isn't allowing people in, could this texter maybe get a voucher, do you reckon? Even on that basis?
Yes, they could get a voucher from the airline, but the airlines can play hard to get and say it's not our problem. Go to your insurance company. Okay. And that has been happening.
Okay. Holiday companies then, do we have time? No, we don't have time for holiday companies, unfortunately. No, so many more questions.
Cancel the news. Come on.
We'll have to get you back on because I can't cancel the news. But thank you very much for coming into us. That's Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine. Thank you very much for joining us.